Guidance Program at ForumIAS.
In this, I would again like to thank ForumIAS.
ForumIAS.
With the MGP course,
the time taken to evaluate the copies is relatively less.
MGP program.
First major benefit of such a test series is that you have a schedule in hand.
Forum for IAS.
Forum as being a good test series.
Yes, good morning class. What have we been discussing in the previous classes? Probity in governance. All right, wonderful. So we have been discussing probity in governance. Let us take another topic. We started with probity in governance. We said that probity also means the absence of corruption. Probity also means the absence of corruption, right? What is corruption? Yes, very simply put, it is the misuse of, of public office for private gains. For what? For private gains. If you see, why does it is said that corruption can be of several types? Corruption can be of several types. Sometimes we say that corruption is of coercive in nature, and the other is collusive in nature. We also say that there is corruption in high office, and then there is petty corruption. There is corruption in high office as well as there is petty corruption. All right. See, why does corruption occur in the first place? Why does corruption occur? Few things about corruption. Why does corruption occur in the first place? Corruption occurs for several reasons because it is a low risk, high gain activity. Second Administrative Commission also recounts that it is a low risk, high gain activity. The risks are high and the gains are little. But in practicality, if you see, the nature of corruption in India, corruption exists both at high offices as well as petty corruption. What is the difference between the nature of corruption in developed countries versus developing nations and underdeveloped nations? Yes, in developed nations, petty corruption will not exist. And why petty corruption is so troubling? Petty corruption is troubling because it causes day-to-day inconvenience plus exploitation of whom? Of the common man. Day-to-day you will have to deal with petty corruption. Petty corruption also is the visible form of corruption. Petty corruption also is the visible form of corruption. We are very likely to have misplaced sympathy sometimes for petty corruption. Why? Because of two reasons. One is that the amount is small. Like you will, for example, not want a person to lose his job because he charges a bribe of 100 rupees. Think of it. You're going on a two-wheeler and a police constable flags you for not wearing a helmet or whatever be the case, and then he says that I can let you off if you pay me a bribe of 100 rupees or something. And you actually pay him a bribe of 100 rupees. Now, while you have also made an error, giving in India is also crime, and moral crime if not a legal, and it is a legal crime as well. But if you see, the challenge is that if you tell people that if you make a video and try to publicize it, you will not get a lot. People will not be very sympathetic for one reason. Or let's say you call up your family and say that he charged me a bribe of 100 rupees. I'll make this video and he'll probably lose his job. Now what will happen is that nobody will support the act of bribe taking by this person. But they will also not be very receptive to your idea. They'll say that ye kuch zyada ho jayega, because the amount of money is so small, so therefore we are not able to see the cumulative effect that it has. Right? The petty corruption, we have misplaced sympathy for those who are engaging in petty corruption. One reason is that because the amount is small, so we are unable to see the cumulative effect on society and economy. We are unable to see the cumulative effect on society and economy. We also sometimes have misplaced sympathy for corruption because it is undertaken by those at bottom rung of bureaucracy. Bottom rung of bureaucracy. Very common case will be, as a senior officer, you will come to know that a retiring peon has been taking 20 rupees each from the village people just to allow them to meet you. And you will come to know that your favorite person who is working in your office and who has been in the office of the SDM or the district collector for like 20 years, and he's about to retire, has probably 3 daughters and will probably have to arrange for their dowry. Now what may happen is that you may come to know that he's charging 20 rupees from every person who's coming to meet you. The amount is so small that nobody generally complains. But if there is somebody who does not have that amount, then what happens is, if somebody who does not have a 20 rupee bribe to pay, what will be his real position? His real position is that he has come to meet you after walking on his foot for 20 kilometers because he'll not be able to afford a bus. That is the level of poverty we have in our country. So that becomes even more pathetic, isn't it? So sometimes, but this, if somebody is charging a bribe of 20 rupees from person, if a case will be coming to your notice, what will happen? The whole staff will say that he has done, Ram Singh ne galat kiya hai. Everybody will say that Ram Singh has made a mistake because he is charging from the poor people. But then the whole staff will end up saying what? That it is his retirement years, he has 2 or 3 daughters to get married. And if you suspend or dismiss him right now for charges of corruption, then, so there will be misplaced sympathy. Why? Also because he's at the bottommost rung of the bureaucracy. People will start comparing him to people who have conducted corruption in high offices with much bigger amounts. So therefore, we will likely to have a misplaced sympathy in this case. When it comes to corruption in high offices, what is the nature of this corruption? This is invisible. This is invisible. It will not be visible, or invisible and not easily understood. Not easily understood. Petty corruption also has one more thing, that it is essentially coercive in nature. Coercive in nature, which means that you are forced to pay the bribe. This will be undertaken for example, getting a birth certificate, a death certificate, or for getting a caste certificate. The amount will not be very huge. It is something that you have to deal on a day-to-day basis. What are you more likely to face? Which of these are you more likely to face? You're likely to face petty corruption. It has another negative effect, if you see. It reduces, it tarnishes the reputation of the government in power. सरकार की छवि खराब होती है. Why? Because the average person will always think what? That this 20 rupee being collected by this Ram Singh will go to whom? To the district collector. That is what they think. तुमको पता नहीं है. Outside your cabin, a peon may be collecting 20 rupees from all before the Janta Darbar. That everybody has to pay 20 rupees if you want to meet the district collector before his Janta Darbar. And what is the common man going to think? the common man's level of IQ will be very less. He will think that all the 20 rupees is going to whom? To the district collector. You are not aware. And nobody will tell you. It is happening all around you, but nobody will tell you. It's such a, because it is a practice that has been followed for several years. And you will never be able to see that. It won't happen in front of you. There will be also a certain amount of fairness, that if somebody is not able to meet you because there were just too many people, then what will the person do? He will say that next time it will be valid, you don't have to pay again, or he will return the money also sometimes. So there is a lot of fairness. So there's a system that is there. Not a good system, but the system does exist. All right. High offices corruption is invisible and not easy to understand. The nature of such will be, it will be collusive corruption. Its nature will be collusive corruption, which will be based on a nexus. What sort of nexus? Yes, it will be based on a nexus of what is called the Neta Babu and businessman. PC Hota committee says that, observes in this regard, that earlier the socialist nature of state, where all the powers, resource allocation and resource distribution, these powers were given to whom? They were given to the bureaucracy. So they said that it was, what would happen is, there would be nepotism and favoritism in awarding government contracts in sort of any resource allocation by the bureaucracy. And this bureaucrat would be controlled by whom? By the politician. So therefore, for a businessman to get any work done by the government, he has to be a part of this nexus. If he is not a part of this nexus, then it will be difficult. Who has to actually do the work? The work has to be done by the bureaucrat, who's the actual executive, who's the permanent executive. But who will make the decisions? The decisions will be made by the neta or the political class. So therefore, bribe giving in such a case will happen to the political class, and that the bureaucracy will act accordingly. Bureaucracy often ends up acting as an extortionist tool. Work will not happen until the wheels of bureaucracy are greased, isn't it? If you see, it will be high corruption in high offices will be more in, it is there in developed nations. Western nations, petty corruption will not be there, but it is also in both developed and developing nations. Petty corruption will not be there in developed nation. So it is sometimes also argued that India is going through a phase of development. So therefore, we are having cases of corruption are at its peak. And therefore, once we end up into a developed phase, then what will happen? The corruption will reduce. All right? Let us make a table, write down coercive corruption and collusive corruption. Collusive corruption, right on the right hand side, collusive corruption. It is a practice in which two or more parties cooperate to commit a corrupt act. Cooperate to commit a corrupt act. The next, the colluding parties, the one who are colluding. This is what is collusion. This is collusion. Both of them are colluding. Coercive is like this. You're holding somebody and saying, so therefore, the colluding parties are accomplices in crime. They are accomplices in crime. The colluding parties are accomplices in crime. They are partners in crime. Both parties benefit. Both parties benefit at the cost of society. Both parties benefit at the cost of society. the bribe giver is not the victim. The bribe giver is not the victim. The bribe giver is not the victim. It is more predominant in developed nations. It is the predominant form of corruption in developed nations, developed societies. It is difficult. It is difficult to trace and catch hold of. It is difficult to trace and catch hold of. It is difficult to trace and catch hold of. It is dominant at higher levels of governance. It is dominant at higher levels of governance, especially at policy formulation phase. Higher levels of governance, especially at policy formulations phase. It has increased post 1991 liberalization. It has increased post 1991 liberalization. It has increased post 1991 liberalization. And what is coercive corruption? Yes. Coercive corruption is one where one party forces another, one party, usually public authority, where one party, usually public authority, one party forces another, such as a citizen or business, forces another, such as a citizen or business, to pay a bribe in cash or kind. Forces another, usually a citizen or a business, to pay a bribe in cash or kind. The bribe giver is the victim. The bribe giver is the victim. And bribe taker is the offender. The bribe giver is the victim. Bribe taker is the offender. One party benefits at the cost of another. One party benefits at the cost of another. One party benefits at the cost of another. Who is the victim? It is predominant in developing nations. Predominant in developing nations and socialist / communist states. Predominant in developing nations and socialist / communist states. Socialist, communist, and authoritarian states also. And authoritarian states. It is easier to trace and prove. It is easier to trace and prove. It is easier to trace and prove and bring the offender to justice. It is easier to trace and prove and bring the offender to justice. It is dominant at the interface of public administration. It is dominant at the interface of public administration with citizen. Dominant at the interface of public administration with citizen or business. It was more common in India before the 1991 economic reforms. More common in India before the 1991 economic reforms. More common in India before the 1991 economic reforms. Isn't it? So if you see collusive and coercive corruption. Certain steps, for example, no, that's all. So if you see for example, whenever there will be an interface between the citizen and the public authority and the citizen, right, then what is the chances? Chances will be there will be opportunity of bribe giving and bribe taking, isn't it? So therefore, what are the few ways then we can fight corruption? Very good. Yes, we can fight corruption is we reduce the interface between public authority and citizen or business. If this will not be there, the interface will be there. Okay, how can this be done? This can be done through, yes, through use of IT and IT enabled services, or e-governance as we call it, through e-governance. Already one example is there. Yes, faceless assessment. Faceless assessment. What is the consequence of this? Now in the detailed application form in IRS, customs and GST has risen higher to the income tax. Earlier IRS IT was the most preferred choice. Not because of corruption reasons, but one more reason that is there, and that is people feel that reduce discretion of public authority. Very important. You reduce the discretion of public authority. For example, what are some of the things that we are doing? Think of petty corruption. You have violated the signal. Now the policeman has caught you, and he has technically the discretion to fine you or not fine you. Isn't it? Think of a policeman, he has the discretion to fine you or not fine you. And if that discretion exists, then there will be opportunity for corruption. So what is the government doing? Government is again going for high security registration numbers. What are high security registration numbers or number plates? Already implemented in Delhi. You will see that all number plates will be of the same type now. You have to always get your vehicles, whether it is a two-wheeler or four-wheeler, you have to get high security registration number plates. You will think that at first that it will bring security to the vehicle, but it is nothing like that. These are high security because this can be read by the camera, and therefore the challan will be sent by SMS to you. No discretion of, so high security number registration plates. This is a very good governance reforms, okay, where traffic violators are sent e-challans. Okay? And traffic violation is detected by what? By cameras using artificial intelligence. So those numbers are readable. Indian companies such as Infosys have been implementing this globally. Right. What else can we think of? See, one reason exists is, in corruption we also say that corruption occurs, एक formula और भी है corruption का, corruption is equal to monopoly plus discretion minus accountability. We have done this formula before. Answer में लिखना जैसे word आए. So what happens is, let us say you have to get a driving license. Now driving license will be given by whom? The RTO. And there is just one agency, that is the RTO only will give it. But do you think that, so therefore RTO will have a driving test, and let us say you are not able to draw an S. So driving test will be a little difficult. You are supposed to drive your vehicle and draw an S or 8, complete 8. Now a lot of people will not be able to do that. So therefore, intentionally they will draw smaller S, 8 than is needed. So depending, for example, they will be sent into 2 or 3 groups. One group that may have paid the bribe will be given to a big 8, that you draw a bigger 8, and those who have not paid prize will be given to draw smaller 8. Right, so if you fail at drawing smaller 8, then you will be rejected. Then you will tell your person that why it was rejected, and he says, go and meet Mr. X. You will meet some people outside, they will tell you how to draw 8. So therefore, why is this happening? This is happening because there is a government authority which is having monopoly, and there is no accountability. It has discretion to say whether it is a yes or no, and it drags accountability to the people. You cannot question why those people are asked to draw a bigger 8 and you are asked to draw a smaller 8. Everybody is getting it. 8 मतलब हाथ से 8 नहीं लिखना है, गाड़ी से 8 वैसे करके ड्राइव करना, वो पाथवे में करना है. Alright, you have to draw an 8 like that. So therefore, then what is the solution? These solutions have been brought already in the passport office. In the passport office, so you will be. Has anybody recently been to the passport office to get a passport made? So your experience will be very different. At first, you will think that it's a government appointment. So therefore, your whole day will be gone. This is the normal calculation that you will have, that you have to. It's a government appointment, so which means that whole day will be gone. But in actually, what has been done? This has been outsourced already to private agencies. So you'll be very surprised when instead of you calling them sir, they are calling you sir. Sir, please stay in line. Now you are not able to understand what has happened in this government office. Right? Suddenly you will think, are we in India or have we moved to a more developed nation? Right? Then you'll realize that there has been agencification, which means that this has been outsourced to private companies. Yes, to TCS itself. Tata. So therefore, the government also knows that the minute we will outsource, everybody will say that a graft has been occurred or kickback has been given to the government. So therefore, you try to give it to a company where there is no blemish, such as Tata. Now nobody will say anything because Tata already has an implicit integrity pact, which means that Tata is very clear that we will never give bribe to anyone. So this is established. So the opposition as well as anybody, any activist also knows that Tata will not do something like this. So the minute this is established, nobody complains. So the government has outsourced it to TCS. So now there will be private sector people who will be, and while this may be a sovereign function, I mean, see, granting visa is a sovereign function, but making a passport should not be so much. It is a sovereign function to a great extent, but the process can be easily done by several agencies, and those agencies can be put to task as to why. So therefore, you will realize that you will be asked for a passport making. The appointment will be of 10:30, and within an hour you will be walking back to your home, right? Because it's a private agency. So therefore, what has the government tried to do? That now private agencies are doing it, and their objective list is there as to what is to be done. So those things are clearly disclosed to you, and within a week you will get your passport. Now in the RTO, there have been proposals that why should it should be the RTO that grants the driving license. Yes. Yes, police verification right now happens, but right now the government has brought those changes also, that with respect to police verification, there is also post facto police verification now happening, which means and then police verification. But then that is something, then what can be done to fight those? That police verification, unless it is unverified by the police, it should be deemed to be verified by the police within 5 days of receiving the police verification. So there is always a pressure. What will the police say? Police cannot unverify you if you are already there. But what it can do is, it can pocket veto it, that I will not do verification for 3 months. So therefore, what should be there? The clauses can be such that it will be deemed to be verified by the police station, by the SHO, if there is no response from the SHO within 5 days. So within 5 days, you simply say that this person, police verification is the stage where there is a verification at your place whether the person stays at that place or not. That is what is police verification in making a passport. So therefore, now things are changed. Things are slowly, rules are being amended. There's a proposal that the SHO will deem to be auto-verified. If the SHO does not reply, it will be deemed to be auto-verified. And if it is not verified, then the SHO has to communicate within a certain number of days. So these are all good governance reforms that are planned or that are happening in the country, isn't it? So with respect to RTO, can it not be done while RTO should be responsible for issuing the driving licenses, but the testing can be outsourced not to just one agency, but to market-led agencies. Any agency can, with a certain accreditation can. Yes, like pollution certificate. Think of it, several agencies exist near the pump or the station, and you can get the pollution certificate from anywhere. So similarly, licensing agencies can be there. If they are found, if then any malpractice is found, then their license can be suspended permanently. They can be blacklisted from any government contract. So these things, so what needs to be done is reducing the monopoly, removing the monopoly and discretion, and have to go for what is called agencyfication. Yes, you can say that, agencyfication. And there should be competition between the various agencies for the providing the public good or public service. This can be done. Yes, agencyfication and privatization. क्या कह रहे हो? What are you saying? If there is just one authority, so therefore competition between various, so there should not be just one authority. Multiple agencies should be there for providing the same services. You think of it just in RTO by bringing one simple reform. That is two things, one simple reform. That is, if you need a driving license, you don't have to go to a certain RTO only. You can go to any RTO in the country. Now, immediately that brings in competition or not? That in your RTO, and that will bring increased lot of risk also. Let us say there is one RTO which is accepting bribes to people. And when will people give bribe? When they are not able to clear the exam. That is when people will be giving bribe. So what will happen is all the bogus drivers will come to one RTO, and when any audit will happen, then it will be clearly identified that this RTO is infamous for issuing driving license without the due diligence process. Yes, accountability will also come. So therefore, that is one technique. All right. So that we are not saying that the union level it can be done. The state sovereignty, the state government, those reforms have to be brought by the state government. Several states have much better ways of issuing a driving license. For example, certain states such as Haryana, such as even Delhi or Haryana, they have a very updated electronic system of issuing driving licenses. They are way ahead. Certain states, even in North India, the southern states are already way ahead. Only some states, barring generally the Bimaru states, apart from that, most states have sorted out these problems. Why? Because the interface, you want to go to Haryana and apply for a driving license, it will be said that you go, the center knows that states will not do these good governance reforms. So therefore, center has created some best practices. It has provided the IT support, e-Parivahan. It has already provided that you use this free website. You use central government's website, you take the registration or application for getting a driving license. We are giving you to the state, you choose your state, and whichever state wants to participate, you participate. So that is already being done. Those moves are being pushed by the central government itself. The state governments lack the will, the political will, or the initiative, or the popular demand for good governance from the people, that they generally do not bring such reforms. Also, and there's opportunities for graft are there. The other thing is that there is also a lack of diffusion of best practices between the states. There is also a lack of diffusion of best practices between the states. So which is why Haryana, for example, will be able to bring that reform, that the entire process of getting the driving license will be seamless and it will be online. But if you just go to Rajasthan, things will be very different, right? Which are adjoining states. But if you just go to a neighboring state, these good governance reforms will not be there, right? So in this aspect, these things can be done. And write down a few lines. Discuss the views of Second Administrative Reforms Commission on corruption. Discuss the views of Second Administrative Reforms Commission on corruption. Write down just a few lines. Gandhi's vision of, write down individual sentences. जैसे मैंने आपको पहले बताया, whenever you make notes, you make a star, you write a sentence, make a star, write down the second sentence. Write it like this, don't write in paragraphs. You have to use these anywhere in your answers. Gandhi's vision of Purna Swaraj can only be achieved if we weed out corruption. Purna Swaraj can only be achieved if we weed out corruption from polity, economy, and society. Polity, economy, and society. Corruption is the weak link in governance. Corruption is the weak link in governance. It threatens both prosperity and equity. Corruption is the weak link in governance. It threatens both prosperity and equity. Fighting corruption is not only a moral imperative, but economic necessity. Fighting corruption is not only a moral imperative, but economic necessity, because it repels foreign investment. Why? Because it repels foreign investment. Why should we fight corruption? Not only a moral responsibility, but also an economic necessity, because it repels foreign investment. Ethical governance essentially means absence of graft and rule of law. Ethical governance essentially means absence of graft and rule of law. Next, rule of law. Rule of law exists. Next line. Rule of law exists when crime is punished. Rule of law exists when crime is punished. Contract is enforced. Contract is enforced. Black markets are checked. Black markets are checked. Right to property is protected. Black markets are checked. Right to property is protected. Tax evasion is controlled. Tax evasion is controlled. Judicial independence is secured. Judicial independence is secured. And when people and business can challenge the government in a court of law, and when people and business can challenge the government in a court of law. You can ask why my driving license was not issued. Next, integrity. Integrity is much more than financial honesty. Integrity is much more than financial honesty. Public office is a trust. Integrity is much more than financial honesty. Public office is a trust. It observes that, it means second ARC observes that corruption has two facets. Corruption has two facets. One, institutions that are corrupt. One, institutions that are corrupt. And two, people who are corrupt. One, institutions that are corrupt. And two, people who are corrupt. Second ARC argues that simplification of laws. Second ARC argues that simplification of laws must be based on Napoleonic principle. Must be based on Napoleonic principle. What is the Napoleonic principle? Yes. Law must be so simple to be understood by a peasant and so short it should fit in a coat's pocket. Huh? Second argues that simplification of laws must be based on Napoleonic principle. Must be based on Napoleonic principle. See, there are certain features of reasons for corruption, which Probity in Governance is a report by National Commission for Review of the Working of the Constitution. So therefore, there are certain features of corruption in South Asia. In South Asia. NCR, actually it is by Mahbub ul Haq. Mahbub ul Haq and re-quoted by NCR WC in Probity in Governance. Probity in Governance, their report. So Mahbub ul Haq, famous economist. So he gave that as certain features of corruption in South Asia and also applies to India. The first feature is that corruption money has wings, not wheels. What does this mean? This means that the money that comes from corruption flees the country. The money that is gotten from corruption flees the country, leaves the country. Where? To tax havens. The money that is acquired through corruption flees the country to tax havens. Therefore, is not productively. Corruption money has wings and not wheels. What does it mean? It means that it will not slowly leave your country. Corruption money, what happens to corruption money? Think of it, the northern states and the southern states, the developed world and the developing world. Let us just imagine that there is a huge act of corruption in Maharashtra versus, let us say, there is an act of corruption in Bihar. Now, what will be the difference? Corruption money in Maharashtra will, for example, as we further go south, the trend will be there. And as we'll further see the Bimaru states, what is likely to happen? What will happen is a new township will be built from the corruption money. Or what will happen? Some factory will be established from the black money generated from corruption, which will eventually employ local people. This will happen in a more developed state. But think of it, in an underdeveloped state, or let's say a state of Bihar, what may happen? Corruption money will be generated. That will not be deployed in the state. It will simply migrate, it will leave the state. Right? So if corruption money is able to stay in that country or the state, then at least some benefit may happen, though it is bad in itself. But at least some benefit will happen. At least some shopping mall will be built, but nothing will be built. This is often the problem with respect to Africa. In Africa, a dictator will, for example, loot a lot of public money. And then will he use that money to build great roads or infrastructure or even a personal mall? He will not build a mall where he will start giving out to the people and start collecting rent. That also he will not do. What will he do? He will move the funds to Europe or US. So the money will flee the country. And when it flees the country, then it damages the economy more than compared to what would happen. Whereas in developed nations such as the US or Europe, the money will not flee the country. Europe's money that is generated out of corruption in public office will be deployed where? In Europe itself. These problems will, for example, again in Russia, there will be the problem that the money that is gotten by way of public corruption in Russia will not stay in Russia, it will be deployed in Europe, Western Europe. So therefore, some nations are likely to perpetuate, and other practices will perpetuate their backwardness, isn't it? Then second is that corruption occurs upstream and not downstream. This means that corruption in high offices, it alters. Corruption in high offices alters the development priorities. The development priorities at the grassroots. And it also alters the culture at the grassroots. Right? So corruption occurs upstream and not downstream. So in the upper side, what will happen is, in South Asia, corruption in high office. And then what will happen? It will be copied by everyone in the downstream. You will see suddenly, sometimes in Uttar Pradesh, the chief minister will change, and on the next day, the behavior of the people on the road will change. You will suddenly see that the government will change, and suddenly you will see that there, instead of people wearing helmet on the bike, suddenly 3 people will be riding on the bike without helmet. Why? Government has changed. If the policeman catches us, then we will make a phone call, depending on who the chief minister is. Why? Because corrupt practices in high offices also has it leads to corruption in the downstream. It leads to corruption in the downstream. It flows from up to down. Third is corruption in South Asia. Corruption in South Asia leads to human rights violations. Corruption is a human rights issue, yes. By this, they have explained, the explanation that is said is that upstream, as in corruption, happens in the higher echelons. That is what they have explained. But it moves from up to down. So what Mehboob has explained here. So they said that it occurs upstream, leads to human rights. Corruption is a human rights issue. It leads to human rights violation. Why does it corruption in South Asia amounts to human right violation? Yes, because of massive poverty and very low per capita income. Corruption leads to stealing the basic, because of massive poverty and low per capita income. Corruption leads to stealing the basic amenities from people, such as food, shelter, and clothing. Such as food, shelter, and clothing. So, for example, corruption in South Asia, when it happens, what will be the challenge? The challenge will be that there is, for example, a corruption in, let's say, astronomy project or a Mars mission, where a government contract has been awarded. Instead of 100 million, the contract has been awarded for 200 million to a private player to implement something. So while it may not lead to it may not have a direct impact on the people. But here what may happen, for example, certain states there are certain states which are underdeveloped and massively poor and backward. What is the problem in those states? Market as an institution has not developed. The southern states in this matter do compare on human development index also. I repeat, on human development index also, the southern states, they are as good as European states. But the northern, which is the great north-south divide. And Maharashtra and Gujarat, Odisha not counted because they have their own challenges. South thinks that they are north, north thinks that they are south. Isn't it? So, yes, petty crimes are also very less. That will also, because the whole culture will be like that. That will not be tolerated by the people. Whereas there will be a larger acceptance for petty crimes in southern. So one thing that happens is, in some of the most underdeveloped states, what will happen is that the markets are not developed. Why markets are not developed? Markets cannot thrive there because there is a poor purchasing power because of existing poverty. That is one reason why markets will not come. Second is the nature of markets will be exploitative and extractive. The market, the private sector which will be existing in those underdeveloped and developing states, they will be exploitative and extractive. If you think, for example, if you go to certain underdeveloped states such as parts of, for example, West Bengal, now deindustrialized. West Bengal earlier was a very industrialized state and now it is deindustrialized. You will say that yes, private companies are coming here. Outside of Calcutta, no private companies will be there. Outside of Calcutta, no private companies will be there. What will happen is the nature of company that will open an office in remote districts of Calcutta or in Bihar or in eastern Uttar Pradesh, what will be the nature of office? They will be just life insurance companies. What will they do? They will come to your house, collect a premium and they will go away. If you see, for example, edtech companies, they had a big boom during the COVID period and even before that. What was the model? The model was clear targeting of states which were massively backward. Clear targeting of states that were massively backward. So what would happen? For example, you have set up regional offices in the most backward districts of the state where there is already low awareness, low illiteracy, and you are selling tablets there. So that is very extractive model of business where you're selling, for example, only insurance policies. You collect a premium and and the products are missold. Most of the products that will be there. As a third, why businesses will not further develop there is because there is a lack of rule of law. Which means that every business will have the idea that the money should be extracted from this region and quickly sent outside. Because the money cannot be, it's the safety of the money of the capital cannot be assured in that state. I repeat, is this clear? This is for your understanding. So the safety of the capital cannot be assured in that state. For example, let us say in eastern Uttar Pradesh, by playing some online or with some online business, you have earned yourself 100 crore. Now next day in the local newspaper in Mau, it is printed that you are worth 100 crores. Now what will be the first thing that you will need to do? If everybody comes to know, yahan se bhago, otherwise, right now there is a government that is very strict on any sort of crime. Otherwise, the minute the government changes, the local MLA, MP, all will come outside your house. That the party needs some funds. Otherwise, some other channels, they will approach you. Right? So therefore, big challenge. So therefore, capital will not be deployed there because there is other reason is there. One reason is, of course, that there is low human development. But other reason is that the safety of the capital cannot be assured. So which is why an African dictator will also deploy his capital where? In Europe, where there is rule of law, where his capital safety can be assured. He knows that if I lose my dictatorship, then my capital in this country will also be gone. But even if I lose my dictatorship, my capital in Europe will be preserved because there is rule of law, or in US. Isn't it? All right. So then yes, there are another views with respect to corruption of Gunnar Myrdal. So Gunnar Myrdal says, according to this thinker, Gunnar Myrdal argues that corruption remains high. He attributes corruption in certain developing nations or third world nations to a general lack of discipline in society. He says there is a general lack of discipline in society. General lack of discipline in society. Myrdal argues that general lack of discipline in society. Myrdal argues that societies remain poor. Societies remain poor or nations remain poor because their government often lacks the political will, to take bold decisions, decisions, even when they take bold decisions, even when they take bold decisions, they may lack, even when they take bold decisions, they may lack the will to implement them strongly. They may lack the will to implement them strongly. The general lack of discipline in society. The general lack of discipline in society. Where strong decisions are detested. Strong decisions are detested, is also responsible for corruption. Is also responsible for corruption. Okay. See, Gunnar Myrdal simply argument is that in developing nations, what will happen is that you just take our nation. Currently, we have a nationalist government in power, which believes that what is good for the nation must be implemented, even if, and it is not necessary that we have to wait for a consensus on taking a strong decision. So if you see a nationalist government we have in power, so therefore it's the way that the governance is happening in the country is that we believe that for national interest and in public interest, what should the nation do? It has to take certain strong decisions and bold decisions. These decisions, will they be popular with the people? They will not be popular with the people. Thirdly, should we wait for the people to completely have consensus in the society on this issue? No. It has to be implemented from the top. This is the view of a nationalist government that we have in power. Don't use the words in your answer also when you write. You use the words nationalist, don't use left wing, right wing, anything like that. All right, because the government itself does not call itself right wing or anything. But it does claim itself to be a nationalist government. So that is a fairly good term. But if you think that just before 2014, we had a government which claimed itself to be more consensus-oriented government. That you think of something like this, the whole issue of GST, goods and services tax. This issue had been pending for nearly 20 years before. Nearly 10 years before this government came to. And therefore, the task of implementing, now global precedence is that whichever government globally has brought GST, GST was very important. You understand why GST is very important? GST was very important because otherwise Delhi has a different taxation rate on something and UP has a different taxation rate on something. So what will happen is something is selling. For example, Delhi knows that it shares the boundary with UP and Haryana, and therefore to promote commerce, what will it do? It will simply do one thing, that is reduce the taxes. So anybody who is living in the nearby Delhi, he will come and buy things in Delhi. Therefore, they will be losing on taxation. Second thing will be businesses, what they will do? They will be located in Noida or let's say in Gurgaon, but they will bill on the basis of Delhi to reduce the tax burden. So at least one thing that GST said, that let us have a uniform taxation so that it does not matter to the common person whether he is buying from Delhi or he is buying from a border state. So therefore, these things have completely stopped now. Unless this were there, now what will happen is, therefore, people will start buying from Delhi and they'll start going to Gurgaon or to Noida or Uttar Pradesh. So now to prevent that, and to prevent that happening at a commercial scale, which means that goods being sent from Delhi to outside states and billed as and sold outside, what will happen? You will have to create a whole new bureaucracy that will be checking excise duty is paid or not. That will be checking on the border. You will have to check every truck. That will create further opportunities of graft, that whether it is selling the goods, whether it has paid due duty in that tax state or not. So GST was very important. But one big problem with GST was that globally, whichever government had brought GST in their country, they had never been able to win elections. So therefore, you see that there was a certain way in this country that so the previous government that existed, they felt that we have to have a state's consensus in coming up with something like this. But a more nationalist government, when it came to power, it believed that we have to implement this decision. We cannot wait for all the states' consensus. we should not wait for, and it showed some leadership. It said that we do not be waiting for consensus, we have to be a molder of consensus. We have to mold the consensus. So therefore GST was passed and they implemented it. So the big question, one thing that was going against the government during the elections was that will they win elections? Then a political specialist said, see, they have brought GST. No government anywhere in the world has brought GST and been able to win 6 subsequent election. So therefore they will not win. However, they won. So therefore you see that Gunnar Myrdal simply says that in third world countries, the major problem will be that political will to take strong decisions will be lacking. And even if they will be lacking political will to take strong decisions, the implementation will be lousy. See, one criticism that was done was when GST was finally brought, so there were very less loopholes for people to exploit. So a lot of political analysts said that if it was done by any government, they would have agreed to so many exceptional demands that in the end it would not have changed anything. They would have accepted so many demands. You have tried to bring GST so that there is a national uniformity in taxation. Then, because you are afraid that the people who are benefiting from the old tax regime, they will complain. So therefore, you create certain loopholes or exceptions or provide. Now what is happening? Everybody is using the exception and nobody is going by the main law. Right? So therefore, whole thing will be that the government did not provide any loopholes. Gunnar Myrdal's argument is that these developing nations, they are unable to pull themselves out of poverty. They remain corrupt because political class there does not have the political will to take strong decisions. And when they take strong decisions, they don't have the political will to implement it strongly. If you see, we had a COVID crisis and there was an economic lockdown that was imposed on the country. Movement lockdown, a lockdown was imposed. Do you see that it was implemented very smoothly? There were no hiccups. It was not that somebody is a doctor and he's not able to go to the hospital. That did not happen. Right? If a doctor is there and he wants to go to the hospital, in no case will the policeman. It was not that policeman is beating up a doctor or a healthcare worker. You did not have any sort of black marketing. Did you have any black marketing for any good or service? Bread, milk, whatever you needed, those things were available. There was no hoarding by individual households. The second, Gunnar Myrdal says that the bigger reason for corruption is there is a general lack of discipline in the society. For example, you will say that let us throw garbage in the dustbin, then people will throw it outside just because they lack the discipline and will have a rebel character. So they will not be able to. And in these matters, the Western or British societies are actually a little ahead. They do have a better sense of discipline than probably the third world nations. That was anyway. Let us do work culture. Let us write a question on work culture. Write down a question. What do you understand by work culture? What do you understand by work culture? How does private sector culture differ from government work culture? How does private sector work culture differ from government work culture? Does it make a case for privatization? Does it make a case for privatization? Right? So for example, this simple question is this. So one, I'll just discuss. So this question, if you see, it will have, one is the introduction, the other will be the body, and this will be the conclusion. In any question, we have a simple format. Right? In introduction, what is my expectation? My introduction is you simply tell me about what is the work culture. That is, you can define work culture. In the body, what does the question say? What is work culture? How does you elaborate on work culture? You simply make a table. What is the second question? How does private work culture differ from public work culture? You make a table and you differentiate between public sector work culture and private sector work culture. And lastly, it says that, does it make a case for privatization? So you argue there are two sides. One is that yes, there is a case, and the other is no, there is not a case. What should be our final position? Yes, very good. So he has completely understood that the two wheels of a chariot, both the public sector is needed. See, it is not just for saying. You see, just think right now, tomatoes, the rates were going as high as 180. Then the government said that we'll just provide 10 rupees subsidy. And we will reduce the price by 10 rupees. That is what the government is, what is the government is providing 10 rupees subsidy. It is nothing more than that. It is simply saying that 10 rupees hum rate kam kar denge. That is what the government has said. Just because the private sector knows that there is the state. State is saying that we will pay that 10 rupees subsidy, the whole market will change from 180, it will fall down to 80 rupees. Because they know ki yahan par backup is there. The state is there, is willing to provide a backup to the minute that message will go, the market will immediately, yes, it will fall on its feet. So therefore, state is a, we discussed in a previous class why it is said that the state is the largest distorter of the labor market. Did we discuss this? And there were 2-3 reasons that we discussed why. One was when we said that with respect to Manrega, the governments will declare that we will give you wage employment for 100 days. Now, what will that lead to? That will lead to whatever wage the government is promising, that automatically becomes the minimum wage. Nobody will be willing to work below that. Then we also discussed, for example, certain positions, such as you say, for example, SSC exams, the exam where you have actually 10 lakh or further more number of people, right? Or in banking exams where there are more than 50 lakh aspirants. What happens? The number of positions are limited. But what will happen is, or any other further take lower government exams. I'm not putting civil services in the same bracket for the simple reason is the number of people who actually go for civil services is very less. But for the lower government exams, what is actually happening is that you know that the government wants to be a model employer. So even if it will do the bharti or if it is going for a permanent job at a level of a constable or a driver, the wages will be 30,000-40,000 compared to the wage that a driver may get in the private sector. So the minute there will be 5 positions in the state for a government driver, 5 positions, but the number of applicants will be, not 5,000, 5 lakh people will apply. So much so that if the government just charges an application fee and then cancels the exam, it will earn enough money to pay those 5 drivers for their lifetime, right? So the minute the government is saying that I'll pay 40,000 to a driver, what will happen? All drivers or a grade 4 employees, they will simply move, they will be simply not be willing to work in the private sector because they'll say that the government is paying much more. So it is completely distorting the labor market or not. Now the private sector is very pareshan, is in trouble that the market just by opening just 200 vacancies, you have just pulled out all the 2 or 3 lakh drivers that were available in the state. Because now they are expecting the similar wage, which cannot be respected by the private sector because it does not provide an economic rationale for it. So therefore, government ends up becoming a huge distorter of markets overall and labor market in particular, isn't it? So just by this announcement, the government will cause a shift from the pricing of 80 rupees per kg to 80 rupees per kg of tomato because the private sector or the markets know that there is state which is there. This will also prevent companies such as, for example, Airtel or Jio or Reliance, the minute they know that there is any public sector player, no matter how pathetic that player is, but just the presence of a government player will ensure that their prices will never be able to go beyond a certain price range. All right. So yes, write down a few things. What is work culture? But what is your understanding of work culture? Achha, this question mein you'll say that yes, there is a case for privatization, and finally you'll say that no, complete privatization is not the solution. That is how you'll conclude. So what do you understand by work culture? Yes. We can say that work culture is the sum total of an organization's values, traditions, is the sum total of an organization's values, traditions, beliefs, interaction, behavior, interaction, behavior, and attitude. And attitude. A, among the employees, attitude. A, among the employees themselves, values, traditions, beliefs, interactions, behavior, and attitude among the employees. And B, of the employees towards the public. And B, of the employees towards the public. Of the employees towards the public. It is the reflection of organizations. It is the reflection. It is the reflection of organizations' philosophy and character. It is the reflection of organizations' philosophy and character. It affects behavior of organization. It affects behavior of organization towards customers and employees. Behavior of organization towards customers and employees. And behavior of employees towards each other. Behavior of employees towards each other. It is influenced by history and age of organization. History and age of organization. First factor, history and age of organization. If organization is well established, and has strong historical roots, well established, old organization, and has strong historical roots, it will have a well established and strong work culture. It will have a well established and strong work culture. Next, second factor, if organization, the field in which it operates, which area or field in which it operates. If organization, the field or area in which it operates. If organization is in the field of technology, it has a flat structure and open work culture. It has a flat structure and open work culture. Third is aims and objective of the organization. Aims and objective of the organization. If organization is private and motivated by profit, it is likely to show preferential treatment. To star performers within organization and premium customers. Star performance and premium customers. So there will be a preferential treatment. All right. Then it will depend on society and national culture. It will also depend on society and national culture. For example, Japan. There, the work culture means long hours of work. Are you aware of it? हाँ, तो कभी जाना तो काम करने नहीं जाना, छुट्टी मनाने जाना. Long hours, rigorous work culture is there. Work is worship. Germany, the focus is in work culture. The focus is a lot on precision. They will advertise their cars that the difference is German engineering. They'll say, why should you buy a German car? They'll say the difference is German engineering. They are obsessed with their precision. Right? If in India it is announced that all Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday will be holiday, and people now only need to come to office on Sunday, तो क्या कहेंगे बच्चे? अब संडे को काम करना पड़ेगा. अलग दिक्कत है यहाँ, right? But jokes apart, if you see developing nations such as India and China, they are among the most hard-working population right now. If you see in US or in Canada, the race is ultimately been not won by Indians. Indians are occupying leadership positions. That is because of the work culture that we have here. Work culture and study culture. खूब पढ़ना पड़ेगा. Why? Because others are studying. So that will flow into the work culture also. इतनी पढ़ाई करने, why do they make you study so hard for civils? Survival instincts, but also one of the reasons is because your work will require you to work so hard. You can't sit in office from 10 o'clock in the morning, and then you will go back home and at 5 or 7 p.m. and then from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. again you will have to work. So why? That will only happen when you are studying like that. Otherwise, you will not be able to work like that. I still remember one student of mine. So what happened is he left a very good job, and I said, he said that he left a very good job at BCG, Boston Consultancy. And then I said, why are you leaving after doing an IT and an IM? He said, I have seen my brother. So I think that he went for IAS and he is having a lot of relaxed work now. So I also want a good work-life balance. So he wrote his attempt. Then what happened is that he got into a certain service, but he did not get IAS. So he's writing the exam again. So this time again, I asked him that, what is your motivation now? Now his brother became a district collector. Right, so now I asked that, what is your motivation? He said, sir, that work-life balance though definitely is not the motivation, because now Bhaiya also works till 10 or 11 o'clock in the night and we are all waiting at home. But yes, I think that I will be able to do something different for the society. That is all that I'm right now motivated by, but definitely not work-life balance. Why? Because when he saw his brother as professional, who's playing badminton in the morning, hanging out with friends, party life, right? Sham mein koi kaam nahi. In the evening, no work. And what happens? After you assume position and SGM still less, and DM-ship, you'll sit in your camp office or home office from 7 p.m. to 10 or 11 p.m. If you don't sit, others will not sit. So you'll call your meeting one by one at that hour. And you have to work every day. During the day, you will do regular administrative works. And in the evening, you will handle exceptional circumstances, such as a VIP visit, such as a protocol duty, such as certain issues of flood and everything. Isn't it? So therefore, why do we make you work so hard? So that there also you are able to sit. Otherwise, if you are not used to study, you'll feel like crying in your office. Why did I take this job? 9 बजे तक रूम में घर में बैठकर काम करना पड़ रहा है. Not many people willing to do that kind of work. So TCS has, so therefore that the major case that has happened in TCS is that recruitment, certain TCS recruiting executives were doing the recruitment not on the basis of merit, but on the basis of graft. That has happened. So TCS has immediately taken action on that, finding that. But it definitely brings, as I told you, one of the lines that second ARC has said that it is an economic necessity to fight corruption. Why? Because it repels foreign investment. So you know that the minute this will happen, what will happen is TCS will have to pay the price. Why? Because foreigners or foreign companies which are giving contract to TCS, they will simply not want to be part of anything like that. Foreign investors will not like that because they will think that what TCS is claiming to be their employees, they are of much lesser caliber than what TCS is claiming to be, because recruitment has not happened on the basis of merit but has happened on the basis of graft. So therefore that will create a that value percolation will always happen from the society into the organization and from the organization into the wider society. That will always happen, isn't it? Difference between public sector work culture and private sector work culture. So if you see public sector work culture, there are certain criticisms. One is that it is marred with, it is having hierarchy. It's not having a flat structure. Public sector work culture, hierarchy. There is lack of transparency, and there is also continuous public scrutiny. It is something like you have an opaque tiffin box and everybody is looking at it. Tiffin box में कुछ दिख नहीं रहा है, और public scrutiny भी is also very high. Always worried that what happens when the tiffin box opens. Why everybody is looking at you? Big problem. So it is more what is called rule-based rather than outcome-based. There is a lack of incentive structure. Performers and non-performers are rewarded equally. In fact, non-performers will be probably rewarded better. Why? We have discussed that line. If you do something, anything can happen. If you do nothing, nothing will happen. That is not the problem. The problem is that when you do a government job, you'll say that whatever pending issues are there, or the past 5 years, I will be the first officer who will dispose it. You would want to not have pendency in your office. So somebody will say, the Babu will say that these are the files, past 5 years, no district collector has ever touched it. So you will say that I want to be the one who will solve all the files. Now you will end up making a mistake there, which will be a bona fide mistake. But in public office, what will be the accusation? That it is a malafide mistake. That if for 4 years, a person who had claimed compensation with the government was not getting it, suddenly in 10 days, how did he get a compensation? So there must be some vested interest that the official must have had. This will be a big problem, isn't it? So therefore, there is a lack of incentive structure. Performers and non-performers is rewarded equally. In fact, in public sector, there is the problem of if you do something, anything can happen, and if you do nothing, nothing will happen. So that leads to what is called bureaucratic inertia. आराम से बैठे रहें, कुछ नहीं करें. Bureaucratic inertia. It is also observed by several administrative commissions before that there is also the problem of absenteeism. Absenteeism and lack of punctuality. Absenteeism and lack of punctuality. There is hierarchy and pyramidal structure is there. Pyramidal organizational structure is there. Everybody understands pyramidal organizational structure? This is the pyramidal organizational structure. One person is there, 2 people reporting to him. Private sector culture, work culture. Say, yes, we often say open work culture, which means that there is a flatter organizational structure. Flatter organization structure. Flatter organization structure. Everybody understands what is a flat organization. Rigid hierarchy is not there. In a government, let us say this is one department and this is another department, and this person has to communicate with this person, what will he do? He will go through the whole hierarchy. He will go through the whole, he cannot ask, or probably he can interact with him, but he can never ask the question to him. He can only ask questions from people of his rank. Whereas in a flat work structure, what will happen is anybody can speak to anybody. So that is why these structures happen, because technology companies, what is the nature of communication? The nature of communication is flat, which means everybody is there on the team messenger, like Google Chat or Microsoft Teams or Skype, everybody is there. So you can even ping the CEO of the organization, right? Automatically. So therefore, this in work culture here is, there is the problem of what is called working in silos. Here the problem is of working in silos. Every department probably doing the same thing and no department benefiting from the work of others. And technology companies, one person has written a code and everybody is copying it. Yes, so therefore there will be a lot of duplication of efforts here. Open work culture, so therefore open work culture that promotes efficiency and quick learning. Flatter organization structure is there. Promotion is merit-based. Promotion, scientific appraisal system, scientific and objective appraisal system. So a student has written this mail to me that why you are always saying that objective appraisal system is not in the government. All right. So typically now you do not have, right now you have a KRA KPIs have come, but see right now the reports. So for example, the performance appraisal of, for example, a superintendent of police earlier would be done by a district magistrate. Now another problem that is there is that this used to be confidential. Now think of it. If imagine a situation where you're the superintendent of police and your immediate district collector, who's a member of the IAS, you're both batchmates, he will write your CR. Then there is a big problem. And imagine that if it is confidential, right? So what would happen is, it will completely, why it is not objective? Because let us say the district collector wants you to make certain concessions. Now your department, police will listen to you directly under the, what may happen is that, let us say for example, there are certain people from the villages who have come to a district collector, they say that our one person has been, and one person has fallen out with the law in the village. So sir, can you request the SP to weaken the case? A very simple thing like that. Now what may happen is, there is not such a big issue at all. It's a rural area and people are so poor that whether they're in jail or outside, it does not matter. Except that it may be just worse off and nothing is going to come out of it. There were a lot of small things that happen in rural areas or in the vaster country. So anything can happen. So for example, now what may happen is, it will completely, how you will rate your superintendent of police will completely dependent on your working equation. You have asked him 6 or 7 things. And out of that, before the tenure got over, the last thing he did not do. Right? Now what will happen is, you will remember that, this confidential report that would be submitted, that will be submitted after 3 years. And that would be very important to get it from the district magistrate. Now you have become commissioner, he has become DIG, something like that will happen. But that record has to be filed. The government will nudge that you submit the report. And that report has to be submitted. Now after 4 or 5 years, you will ask that you fill up and give me a good stuff 5-star rating. If you don't give a 5-star rating, then for example, he may not be able to get into a good department. For example, his name is supposed going for CBI. So he'll need a 5-star rating from everyone who has worked with him. Now there, just because of that one reason, what will happen? Or he has to get impaneled. So what may happen is, for that one objective, you will say that I will give you 3.5 or a 4. No explanation is to be given that why you have. For example, you ask the superintendent of police to go easy on a certain case for whatever reason, because of your understanding of the ground reality. You realize that if we don't go easy, then it will lead to communal violence, that anything can happen. So you have to, it's not just about following the just the letter of the law. You have to manage the situation. Again, I said na, that samasya honi hai, but mudda should not be there. It should not become a big. So you have to know that if I go hard on this person, communal violence is likely to happen. You see that government is government is an agency to manage human population and avoid conflict. That is the primary purpose of governance or administration. That you have to manage the human populations, their emotions, and you have to avoid conflict. That is the primary task. If you see from a national perspective, what will be your priority? Your priority will be that there should not be any conflict in any part of the country. And the local officials must have the mind enough not to let any situation escalate, and you have to manage conflict. Which is why sometimes your assessment will be that if we don't go easy in this case, then there will be conflict, and here we have to probably be selectively blind. Those things are unfortunate realities of statecraft. Right? Unfortunate reality of statecraft. We have discussed this briefly when we discussed politics and ethics, that sometimes you will have to be selectively blind to certain crimes if you want peace. So therefore, that is the expectation. So anyway, earlier this report, now those things have changed. Now the Superintendent of Police confidential report is not, first it is not confidential, and now it is not done by the district magistrate in most states. Now it is done by the line department, that is the IG. And in commissionates, this system is completely done away with. The minute this system is completely done away with in commissionate systems, the police becomes completely independent of the civilian administration. So you'll see those perks also. All right. So anyway, merit-based promotion plus scientific and objective appraisal system. Therefore, there is, in private sector work culture, because there is profit motive, so therefore customer centrality is there. Customer centrality. It is marked by a good incentive system, which means performers and non-performers are not awarded equally. It is also marked by what is called, we often say, professionalism. What are the reasons for this variation? What are the reasons for this variation? The variation of such work culture in the private sector and such work culture in the government or public work culture. So several reasons for it. One is that if you see in the government or public sector, there is no focus on reskilling. There is no focus on reskilling. There is no training to lower staff, or lack of training. Third is recruitment is marred with corruption at the state level. That is why you'll see that the demand will be that why don't you conduct the exam? The exam must be conducted by what? The commission, the Public Service Commission of the state. Otherwise, what is the chance? Recruitment will be marred with corruption. You think of it, you are joining as a DGP and then you come to know that 10,000 constables have been recruited. Now you just want to ask one question, that have they been recruited by the commission, that is the state commission? Then you know that recruitment will be done at least in a better manner. But somebody tells you no, the respective IGs or DIGs were supposed to recruit from their range. Now you are worried. Right, now you are worried. Why? Because you do not know what consideration could have been there. But if you know that at least state level agency was involved, then chances are less. If you come to know that they have been recruited by UPSC, then you are completely worry free that they will listen to you. Otherwise, what will happen is this person has gotten a job because of his proximity to a certain officer or politician. So therefore, his loyalty will be to whom? To that officer or politician or that caste group that has gotten him the job. He will not listen to you. Isn't it? Then there is also the problem of job security, because the job is secure. So therefore, it kills competitiveness. Job security kills both initiative and competitiveness. isn't it? And why private sector work culture is in this direction? Because there is profit motive is there, so that is one. Second is there is no public scrutiny. What you are doing, it is not open to public scrutiny. Then there is also, yes, accountability to markets. Their accountability is to the markets, so therefore they are likely to be more efficient. It's also, there is inherent competitiveness. What is the reason? Job insecurity. You're thinking of a hike, then you read in the newspaper that Microsoft has fired 2,000 tech employees. Now you're afraid to ask for a hike. Right? So does all this make a case for privatization? So you will argue that, does it make a case for privatization? So you, in humanities, remember, whenever you are asked a question that does this or that, any question, don't begin with a yes or no. We always arrive at a conclusion rather than begin with a conclusion. नहीं तो लिख के आ जाओगे, no, there is no need for privatization, answer over, and you turn the next question. No, you argue for and against the case, right? Marks will be given for what? For the argument, not for the answer. Otherwise, you have written, sir, I have answered it, but I have not got marks, isn't it? See, we say that private work culture is better. Why? Is there a case for? See, we say that few things are there. Case for privatization. We say that private work culture is better. Why? Because it is efficient. Right? Because it is efficient. And it is also, okay, professional. It is also economical. All right. But there are several challenges to it. For example, there are several companies that have failed. You can name n number of companies. For this year, we'll not use Bajus. Next year, we can say, add to the list. Abhi time hai, right? So, for example, Kingfisher. Very good airlines. Which airlines was there before it? What was the name of the airlines? Huh? Air Deccan. So what happened in our country? Once Captain Gopinath, you can give us a very good example. Captain Gopinath. This person said that I will make every Indian, I'll make flying affordable. Very good incentive, and therefore he established what is called Air Deccan. Air Deccan was one company that was no frills airline. Just like no frills bank accounts are there, which means they will not give you anything, but the bank account can be 0 rupees also. They'll not give you too many facilities. So they said that earlier airlines was very different. The minute you enter Air India, they will give you chocolate and sandwich and whatnot, all for free. But the price would be extremely high, 20,000 flight tickets. Air Deccan came sometime. So this company, Captain Gopinath, he said that I will make flying affordable. How can you make it affordable? By reducing the facilities. By making it more efficient and reducing the facilities. So how would you do that? For example, you did away with the free food that you give on the airlines. So you're able to save approximately 200, 300 per. Then you did away with a lot of other facilities. For example, you came up with smaller seats that would accommodate more people. You did away with having too many on-ground staff and off-ground staff. You did away with elite premium air hostess system. You simply had that any young person who's interested in hospitality, and therefore no alcohol or wine serving in airlines. So therefore they were able to cut cost. The minute they were able to do it, they brought down the flight tickets, average Delhi-Mumbai flight tickets, which used to be 14,000, 18,000, 12,000, they brought it down to anywhere around 5,000-6,000 for the very first time. Then what happened? Vijay Mallya, king of good times. He was earlier the chairman of United Breweries, inherited by his father. So therefore, he felt that in India, what his ambition was completely different. His ambition was that we will bring what? Yes, world-class amenities and luxury to airlines. So therefore, he had a different vision. Now, what he did was, at that time, he said that I will take up all the shares and I will do a hostile takeover. In the end, what happens is Air Token technically went down and Kingfisher Airlines came up. Now, Kingfisher Airlines, they said that we will provide you the best luxuries in the air. They will hire the top air hostess and the ground staff, which will be very well trained, very well sophisticated. We'll provide alcohol, wine, everything in the airlines. And except we will not give salary to the people. Right, so you came up. Now they did not realize by that time the system had changed. The world had changed. The customer, because of this pressure, other companies also brought down their costs. And the Indian audience or the Indian consumer was not willing to pay for those luxuries in the airlines. The primary aircraft that is used is Airbus. And it is just a bus that flies in air, nothing more than that. The seats are also not as comfortable as the bus, probably worse, with accommodating more people. But by that time, the flavor had changed. People did not want the Indian middle class and even the lower middle class now went into the airlines. He did not have expectations of seeing very fancy things in the aeroplane. He did not want that. He simply said that my traveling cost should be minimum. So therefore, Kingfisher did not take off. And the way they're spending the money that was to be spent on, for example, providing services, that was spent on creating some sort of marketing activities. They used to have an annual calendar and whatnot. A lot of things were there. So therefore, this company finally went bankrupt. So there were a lot of failed companies are there, which have said that private sector is not the most efficient in the utilization of resources. It is not the most economical in utilization of resources. Private sector ensures efficiency is a myth. It cannot be said conclusively that private sector is always much more efficient. Then other argument that is against is with respect to private player, that it is said that in public sector, there is always the opportunity of graft, or there is in matters of awarding contracts and in recruitments or appointments. In recruitments and appointments, that is one criticism that goes with the private sector, public sector. But you can see that opportunity in awarding contracts or in financial transactions. You can very well see that even in certain cases, ICICI Bank under the chairmanship of whom? Chanda Kochar will do it in conflict of interest and conflict of values. In the case of Chanda Kochar, what? It granted loans to a party which was related. It granted loans to a related party. You understand what is a related party? Means that she is my relative and I have given loans to her, or for example, she is my relative and I have given loans to her and she has passed it on to this person. Right. Then there is also, as these days, sometime it was in the month of June itself, this TCS recruitment scam. TCS recruitment, June or July? It was in June. In June 2023, companies, blemish-free companies such as Tata Consultancy Services were exposed to have made recruitments to the organization on the basis of bribe money and not on the basis of merit. All companies you can write. Then third, you can also argue, we have to prove our point that they does not make a 100% case for privatizations. You can also argue that private sector is not even a model employer. Private sector fails at being a model employer. Why? For example, there is the common problem of what is known as the concept of vulgar salaries. which means exorbitant amounts paid to the top management and the CEOs in private companies in the name of talent retention. That he's too talented, therefore we need to pay him vulgar salaries. So it's not a model employer. Private sector often does not follow, or model employer then is often resorts to contractual employment without granting permanent employment to its staff. It's also, private sector is not good at work-life balance, lot of undue corporate pressure. Is also not good at providing security, job security. Is also not good at providing job security. Private sector is also not good at, for example, handling conflict of interest as seen in the ICICI Bank Chanda Kochar case. So therefore, what should be our final view? Our final position should be such that certain sectors can be disinvested and be given to the private sectors. Areas such as, for example, telecom, insurance. और क्या areas हो सकते हैं? Telecom, insurance, or even overall manufacturing. The private sector is better at this. But certain functions such as, you can always argue, such as railways and defense to care, anyway it will remain. But certain sectors such as railways, which is an agency for social justice, these sectors must remain within the government and creates. Then what else can we conclude? We can say that the public sector can learn from private sector. What can the public sector learn from private sector? Batao. You can say efficiency, effectiveness, economy, all these things it can learn. And the private sector can learn from values of the public sector, such as a model employer, job security, work-life balance, moderated wages and incentives to the top management. Moderated wages and incentive to the top management, right? I think Arundhati Bhattacharya, she was the former chairman of State Bank of India. So she famously complained that I'm the world's poorest paid head of a bank, right? The biggest bank of the country and probably the lowest paid CEO of a bank. Yes, that is the case. So that is what we can learn from each other. No, so he's saying the public sector is learning the wrong things from the private sector, but few things are there is something known as the realities of doing business. There are certain things that there is a reality of doing business. Until a time when we did not have so much of a large public deficit. Right now the deficit is, now we are trying to reduce it, but you think of it. The government, conventional view in the government was that even if the government is running in deficit, it is perfectly all right. But after 1991 reforms, this idea changed. Because the countries that were running completely, they were running large welfare programs on public money and running in deficit. What happened? They failed. So after 1991, the global thinking on this, how to run a state, completely changed. It was felt that the state must be run from the money of the taxpayer. It should not be run from the future money that taxpayers will pay. Right? That kharch aaj kar lete hain, today let us make the expenditure, tomorrow we will recover it by taxation. The state also should not be run by borrowing too much. So therefore, this idea changed after 1991, which is why you would see that states were told to make structural changes to their economy before you could get a finance from World Bank or IMF. So this thinking itself changed. So what happened right now, if you see just 10 years back, the Supreme Court said that Manrega is a scheme and the government becomes the largest violator of the minimum wages. And so what is the reason? So the Supreme Court said, and there was a public interest litigation filed, that why should the government not pay minimum wages to Manrega workers? Now the problem is there. Some of you may have seen, for example, this web series Sandeep Bhaiya. It has come. So in the first episode, I think I was able to see it for 15-20 minutes, where this character goes, he goes to a brick kiln and he says that there is a violation of Minimum Wages Act. Now, while that may look very heroic, what is the real reason violation of minimum wages is happening? Because if those wages are determined by the market, if those wages are not paid, if the wages are paid higher than that, then what will happen? The cost of brick will unfortunately go higher, which means the brick kiln will have to be closed. And if the government keeps regulating minimum wages, then what will happen is, then most businesses will start importing bricks from China, because it is simply not possible to do it in India. So therefore, what happens is, while it may look heroic at first, but the problem is that, so the government itself says that we cannot pay minimum wages even in Manrega after making them work for 8 hours a day. Supreme Court said why? The Prime Minister had replied back then that Manrega is not a wage employment but a social security scheme. That is the reply. So therefore, what happens is that the government itself now realizes that we cannot pay so much. So therefore, what will the government do? Government will do recruitment on the basis of contract workers. Second, it will also hire an agency, but not hire the people on their own payroll, because then they will have to give the benefits of a regular employee. So therefore, yes, you could say that you could criticize it, that the public sector or the government is learning all the bad practices of
They recruit people like us. They give us salaries. They give 80,000, 70,000 kind of salary.
Yes. 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 Why do they give high salaries in this Young India Fellowship and others? Is because first is they want to attract good talent. That is one. Second is that they do not have the burden of carrying on for the next 30 years. It is only for a limited time. So therefore, for that contractual duration, even high salaries can be paid. Yes. Now, doctors' recruitment also is done at a high salary level, 85,000 plus. Sometimes you will see doctors are higher in some state governments getting more than the district collector. Collector has a problem. But then what is being done? All right, let us, ठीक है, हाँ. It is bypassing? Yes, so when contract workers are employed or work is given to an agency, then it also bypasses the affirmative action. Because in those, the private agency is not bound by affirmative action or reservation policy. So that is also being violated. All right. Write down a question. What do you understand by conflict of interest? What are its various types? What do you understand by conflict of interest? What are its various types? Skip pehle, just before this, let us finish off one more topic. We have done corporate governance. We have done no. Isko samajh lete hain. It is a basic understanding. Just before this question, let us finish off one more thing. Uske baad we'll do this. Corporate governance. Always hear this term, that there should be more corporate governance in a business. What does it mean? Everybody understands what does it mean when we say that there should be corporate governance in a business? What does it mean according to you? Huh? Ethical practices, okay. So ethical practices, that's a very subjective term. What would comprise? What would do with those ethical practices? Major focus should be on for shareholders' benefit. That is one principle of corporate governance, that shareholder benefit has to be upheld. Now let us try to understand this whole thing from corporate governance, or the whole thing from a certain example. Anybody who makes good tea here? Good tea, chai, what is your name? Huh? So let us imagine that Jiten makes good tea and he starts selling tea. No, his story will not end up becoming the Prime Minister of the country. All right. He'll be setting up a company. All right. So let's say Jiten makes good tea. All right. So Jiten has a stall here and he makes good tea. And what happens is, over a period of time, he is selling, right from selling 100 cups of tea, he ends up selling thousands of cups of teas. All right. So now, therefore, what is happening is, there are thousands of people coming every day to drink tea from him. And earlier, when he started, he was only working himself, maybe with another assistant. But now to serve 1,000 customers, he has made this as the size of the stall. Earlier there was one counter, now he has 10 counters. So now to cater to the increased customer base, he has recruited some other helpers. Now Jiten is good at only one thing. And what is that? He knows how to make tea. He does not understand how to do accounts. He does not understand how to do finance. He does not understand how to generate profits. So what will happen is, when a business such as Jiten's will grow, he will need to recruit people. And when what will happen is that, imagine Jiten scaling it to a limit that he is selling 10,000 cups of tea every day. And for that, he has hired maybe a team of 80, 100 people to render that service. Now, what happens is, in the case of Jiten, is that now the problem is that to run Jiten's business, while he knows how to make good tea, that alone will not lead to organizational success. And secondly, what has happened is that the scale of his business is that now he has hired people. So therefore, there are a lot of people who are invested in the business. And therefore, earlier, while Jiten could, so what he has done, he has rented certain premises. All right, and now he's doing this. The scale of operation is such high that right now, if you see the stakeholders, the original stakeholder was whom? Jiten. And probably what may happen is that Jiten, to expand his business, he may have taken some money from his friends and family, promising them to return that money. So there are two models where people may have invested. One is a debt model where Jiten says that you lend me 10,000 rupees and I'll pay you what the bank was giving you as an interest, and 8% interest. So what happens in a debt instrument or a debt model? It is, your capital is assured and the person who is taking the loan will pay you a certain interest, whether his business goes up or whether his business goes down. So let us say you are his friend and you have invested in his business. You are not really concerned, you are not greedy also. You said that, no, you just pay me what the bank was paying. I have whether you become the next Chayos of the country or next Byju's, I have no business. I just need my 8% interest. Then there will be certain other people. So therefore, what may happen is, Jiten may, to expand his business, he may have certain creditors. Right? Creditors who have loaned some money to him. Apart from this, Jiten has a certain accountability to his expanded clientele who are his customers. Not only now he has started his chai, but earlier, while he used to, it was a cash and carry system where you pay 10 rupees and you get a cup of tea. He has started a subscription system where you can pay for the whole 3 months or 6 months or 1 year and you can get a 50% concession on your tea. So a lot of people are there. So therefore, now these people also become stakeholders in the business. If tomorrow Jiten says that I don't feel like making tea today, he cannot simply wind up because he's not feeling like it. Right? So therefore, the number of stakeholders is, now remember, Jiten, if he had a single stall, that is something that he still had the choice. But now with expanded business operations, what will happen? He has certain customers. Creditors may, as I said, There'll be creditors who are debt creditors, such as banks or friends and family or any other. They could also be something which are, some people may say that, Jiten, for example, Jiten comes to me and he says that I will extend it by 10 times. So for example, I may say, Jiten, I'm willing to fund you a part of the expansion, but in return, I would want, if you grow 10x, I would want my money to grow 10x. So Jiten says that, what if I'm going to take this, what if I take your money and instead of 10x, I make it half. I make a loss. What will I say? If you lose the money, then my money also becomes half. So therefore, I will become an equity investor, or that is what is known as a shareholder or an investor. I'm an investor in his company. All right. So this is basically how a small organization will kind of scale up. Apart from that, so now what happens is Jiten's business has expanded to a level such that few people have come up to him. They have reached him and say that, why don't you scale up and you set an all India chain of chai POG, right? Right. You take those and you start your retail store and therefore you form a company. Now today Jiten's branch, don't quit preparation now, thinking of the plans. All right, now Jiten has 8,000 retail stores across the country. The business has expanded. He's probably employing around 8,000 people who are making tea across the country. Now what happens is his turnover and revenue has increased to a level such that now the government is interested in his business. Why is the government interested in his business? Not just taxes, but the government knows that if Jiten tomorrow does not feel like it, or Jiten tomorrow makes a bad business decision. For example, somebody said that real money is not in tea, real money is in coffee. Because Indians feel they don't want to pay more for tea, they'll say that I can get it anywhere. But coffee people are willing to pay more for it. Now what happens is somebody comes and says, Jiten takes this decision that his stores will be renamed from Chayos to Coffeeos. Right. And what is his core interest? What was he good at? He was good at he made the best tea. He does not know how to make good coffee. But then he hires what is called experts or professionals who make coffee for him. Now he has taken a risk, but unfortunately what happens is there are just too many stores that already sell coffee and they do it better than him. So what may happen is his business may have a downturn. Now there could be few things. Now as Jiten's business grows, his friends, family will come to him and what will they tell him? What do you think will most friends and family tell him when his business is growing at breakneck speed? They will be impressed. They'll invest. But more than that, there is something else. Jealous? Further down or niche jao? No. So what will happen is every day there will be doomsayers who will say ki competition is coming. Who will say that milk prices have risen and if you increase the prices, the customers will go away. And while all the money that you have earned, you are investing in opening new chains. If you run a loss, you'll be there on the road. So therefore, what do you need to do? You probably need to save some money for yourself and your children. Very common scenario. You will need to save money for yourself, your children, and for bad weather. Because business can go in any direction. Therefore, it's not a salary, it's a business. So therefore, you can have bad weather. For 2 years, the tea sale, the weather is such that nobody is drinking tea. It's generally hot for 4 months. Now it is hot for 8 or 9 months or 10 months because of certain extreme climate events. So people are not drinking tea and you only sell tea. People are saying, "Wo sab chodo, I need something cold to drink." So therefore, there could be something like that unforeseen. Or in the middle of the COVID crisis happens and now you have to pay rents and there are no customers. Right? So therefore, now what will happen is, so therefore, if something like this, something unforeseen as well as foreseen, several things can happen. Unforeseen things can happen. A business decision can go wrong. So therefore, who will now be interested? These people will be interested. That you have taken money from him. What do I want? I want my money back because it is technically not my money, but the depositor's money. The customers who are banking on him will want a certain security, though they have no control over it. Then there will be investors who would want safety of their money. And why is the government interested? There is another stakeholder and that is the employee. The government is concerned that if this person screws up in his business, makes one bad business decision, or bona fide business decision, that is something that the government cannot check. He makes a genuine mistake in his business, that is something that the government cannot check. But what if there is a business practice, for example, somebody says that why don't you start a cold drink business, and where you, whatever money you have got it from here, you move it into the cold drinks, and you will be now competing with Pepsi and Coke, and you will be able to beat them, for example. Or even if you don't want to beat them, but you move your funds and create a separate entity that will be selling cold drinks. Now, very likely Jiten will think that let me move my funds and park it safely here so that tomorrow this money is the safe money that I have. Even if this chai business goes down, I will be safe. Very logical thinking. But now what happens is the government is very interested that, and sometimes what will happen is Jiten will be so worried about his business failing, and a COVID lockdown, economic lockdown, will force him to go more and more for safety, whereas earlier he was more and more for risk. Now he's go more and more for safety, so much so that he will divert the funds for certain activities that are not going to aid in the business development. And that means that money is diverted for areas which is not going to help in the growth of the core business. Then by a circular chain, his business will fail, not because it was actually originally going to fail, but because of his fear. Why? Because he was, earlier he was investing in the business. Now he, out of fear, what he has done? He is trying to siphon off the funds to somewhere else, not investing in the business itself because of the fear that all will be lost. Now this is classical, that story will happen across any corporate company, any big company, whether it is the Amrapali group, which is a classical textbook case. All right, this is a classical textbook case. So which is why the government says, now why is the government concerned? The government concern is not that if he makes a mistake and he's employing 8 to 10,000 people, so therefore if he shuts down shop, then it will have a ripple effect on the economy. First is 8,000 people will lose their jobs, so labor market will be flooded with too many people. And if there are too many people suddenly are pulled to poverty, then government's job is increased. These 8,000 people living in one area, if they go below a certain level, earlier they were going to private schools, their kids, and they were going to private hospitals. Now suddenly they are left without money. They'll be consuming suddenly public, they will be coming back to whom? They'll be coming to the government. So the government knows that this cannot be allowed to happen. Second is, government is also concerned about the rights of the investors. That investors' rights must also be protected. People who have given money to him expecting, now the government cannot check any bona fide mistake, which means he makes a decision of selling, for example, cold drinks, and that is a bad mistake because he's not able to compete with Coke and Pepsi. So that is something that is a genuine business mistake, right? But there can be malafide where probably he's trying to build a tower and he thought that I will start selling flats, right? He's trying to build from this money, the money that he's getting from tea, he's trying to get into real estate, right? So therefore, why? At least I will have 100 flats which I can sell to people, right? Anything like that, or any other business interest. So that is what is in core of corporate governance. The government after some point will want that Jiten's business is employing so many people. Jiten's business is having such a huge customer base. Jiten's business has borrowed so much from the public banks or even private banks that now Jiten's business should not be allowed to fail. And this will happen. At this point, this will happen. The government may also, they will be also thinking that Jiten's specialization is knowing how to make tea with adrak and ilaichi, chat or chai GPT, right, with AI, adrak, ilaichi, isn't it? He's only knowing that much. So what will happen? The government will ask Jiten that, why don't you follow certain principles of corporate governance? You still work on making your tea and just work on that formula. And make sure that that kind of tea is available everywhere, but leave the organization's management to whom? To a professional appointed. Why don't you get somebody from IIM or hire him as the chief manager in your company and let him be you be the owner of the business and let somebody else run the business. Now, what will be his problem? He knows that this business has been raised from an infancy stage to such a high stage. So therefore, what happens is he knows that only I understand the business. The CEO will come and he will make some decisions which Now the CEO is a professional person. He knows accounting, he knows management, he knows finance, he knows taxation, he knows compliance, he knows law. But he does not know business, or he does not know why people drink tea. Right? So therefore, he will make all the good decisions which is good for running an organization professionally. But he does not understand the core of the business, that is चाय में हल्की सी चीनी ज़्यादा ही रहनी पड़ेगी, तभी लोग चाय पिएंगे. The sugar content must be a little high, otherwise people will not find it tasty, or the masses will not adopt it. So therefore, that is his business recipe. He'll say that I know that older people won't drink tea because I'm adding sugar, but I'm catering to the masses. The younger people do not worry about sugar in their tea, and that is what I'm looking at. Right. So therefore, at this point, what happens is the government would want him to follow certain norms of corporate governance. And that corporate governance, technically, will need to have a certain structure. All right? You understand this once. No, always, yes. So the CEO will, so what will happen is when the business grows, the person who has founded the business, such as Jiten, the business will grow beyond his capacity. That will always happen. If you see, with respect to Infosys, Narayan Murthy was the founder of Infosys. They hired a professional CEO. This professional CEO said one thing, that the company is as big in India as, let's say, we are a global IT power. We are a NASDAQ listed company. We are not just a BSE list. We are a NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange. Mein also Infosys is there, Infi is there. So we have aspirations to become a big tech giant. So you should pay me like you, for example, if Google would pay me or Microsoft would pay me, so should Infosys wants to be the next Microsoft, so you have to pay me like that. Now, Narayan Murthy felt that these ideas are not good for the organization. Why? Because he had run the business in a certain manner. He had certain principles, certain values. He felt that such high salaries should never be given to anyone in the company. Right? Those were his principles, and that got him so far. But the new CEO will say that this is not how business is done. You give very high packages to the top manager, and all Satya Nadella and Sundar Pichai will come and join you, and they will make it big. That is what he will say. But do you see there will be a creative conflict between the founder and the professionally employed people? So therefore, there's a structure of corporate governance. Okay, just. So in corporate governance structure, what will happen is that it will be required that there should be what is called a board of directors. This board of directors. These board of directors will sit across a table. This will make all the decisions. Who do this board represents? This board will represent investors, shareholders. If the loan is too big, I repeat, if the loan is too big, your total capital is 50 lakh rupees or 10 lakh rupees, and out of that, 5 lakh rupees is by SBI, then SBI will say that I want a position in the board. It could be your creditors. They represent whom? They represent primarily the shareholders. They are the board. What will be required? It will be required that Jiten, over a period of time, he should become what? He should become one of the directors and hire other directors. And they should appoint whom? A CEO. A CEO is not the owner of the company. A CEO is not the owner of the company, but he is the chief executive officer, which means that the board gives the direction and the CEO is supposed to execute it. Now, what will happen is, as of now, as Jiten runs his tea business, what will happen is that he will also be the CEO. So when the business will expand to a certain level, all these stakeholders know that ab business is going to get busted now. What will they want? They know that Jiten knows the nitties-gritties of the business. He also has access to a lot of financial information which we don't have. There will also be auditors. Auditors' role is also there. Who are auditors? Auditors are professional agencies that have access to the financial statement of the company, bank accounts, their books, and are able to judge whether the business is there any red flag or not, which means there could be several red flags. One is that there is no sales, but there is a high spending. lot of red flags can be there, right? Or for example, there is lack of compliance. So what will happen is, you will be required to be one of the, Jiten will be made a director in the organization. Now the banks, the creditors, everybody would want what? They would want that there could be lot of, for example, even a doubt of, for example, SBI's money that Jiten may be siphoning to other company. What is he doing? He is earning from here and he is siphoning of it to other places. So therefore, if Jiten is also the CEO, then this will not be easy to detect. So what is important is, you appoint a independent CEO. This person will make the signature. On his signatures itself, financial transactions will happen. So the minute when Jiten will tell him that you transfer this amount to our new Coke factory, cold drinks factory, the CEO will report it to the board. And this board is having Jiten as well as which are directors, as well as having independent directors. Who are independent directors? Yes. See, they could be having interest in the business, but yes, you could say independent directors. At least they have no affiliation directly to Jiten. So Jiten at first would want to make whom directors. And logically, so when he's starting his business, he will probably put all his family members in the, so that everybody is listening to him and they are running the business. But after a point of time, what will happen? The government will require that. So therefore, first principle of corporate governance. The first principle is separation of management from ownership. Separation of management from ownership. Why it is important? If owners are the managers, then anything can happen. Narayan Murthy will probably say that we'll invest in, let us say Narayan Murthy has an idea, he will say that our focus will be in, for example, getting government IT contracts. Or for example, there will be certain, not Mr. Narayan Murthy, let us say Jiten, for example, he has this idea. Abhi bachcha pareshan ho gaya hoga, hai na? So he has this idea that I will take the contract of government supplying tea to all government offices across the country. Now what will happen is that if this is discussed in a board, the board will tell him that you focus on your retail clients. You focus on student areas, employee areas where there are working professionals, IT professional, all those areas, young population, you focus on that. Don't get into a government contract, because government will pass a contract, then somebody will say that you give a kickback or you pay somebody to get the contract, then government will not release money for 10 months, then somebody will ask you more money. Then what will do? You will reduce the quality of tea, add more water and less milk, and you will further reduce, your brand value will go down, and eventually it will reflect. It will problem, so you don't get into it something. So therefore, what may happen is, why this we have discussed earlier. Now, if, for example, Jiten ends up giving a kickback or a bribe to a government functionary or a politician for getting a government contract. Now, this is a red flag or not? Because that money will be recovered from the reducing the quality of the product. He's already trying to do it very competitively, as low as possible. That is why he's the #1 tea seller in the country, isn't it? So therefore, what will happen is that everybody, including the creditors, would want to know whether a bribe has been given or not, because that itself means that something will go wrong in the future. All right. So therefore, now for this, if Jiten is both the CEO as well as the owner, then there is a problem. Quietly, this will be done. But let us say this bribe of 10 crore is supposed to be given to a politician. And the CEO will have to approve that, because CEO has access to all the, he's not a part of the family. He's also not related to Jiten, who's the owner. So therefore, the CEO will know that this is there. And who is he? He's an independent person. Who is he? He's a professional person. He knows that if I'm part of any such shady deal and tomorrow something happens, then my career is over. From Jiten's business to CCD, they will not accept me. From Infosys to Google to Microsoft, my journey is over, because once I'll be known that I was part. So therefore, what anything like this, anything that will wrong will happen, this CEO will report to other members. So therefore, it is very important what? The first principle is separation of management from ownership. So that itself will bring in a lot of transparency. There is one person who's an outsider and he is a professional and he knows what is happening in the business. The second most important principle will be the induction of independent directors. Now think of it, this CEO is an outsider, professional from IIM, and he is running this 8,000 crore tea business. Now what happens is that the first thing that he notices is in the board of directors, everybody is Jiten's family member. So even if he reports, nothing will happen. So therefore the government will say what? That you should have independent directors, and who will be these directors? They should not be related to they should not be related to you. Now all these directors, they will generally, when a bank will go bust, what will government do? Government will appoint an independent director. They will not do it themselves. They will ask the person, the company that you appoint an independent director. Why? Acha, who will be the independent? You will see that they will be taken from eminent walk of life. For example, Uday Kotak will be made to join a failing bank or a failing company. Now Uday Kotak knows that under my nose, no hanky-panky can happen. I can't be signatory to a decision where there is any corruption is involved. Otherwise, my name will be gone for. So what will he do? If he comes to know that some corruption is happening in this organization or something wrong has happened, he will not report it to the media, but he will resign. Which is why you see that whenever the directors resign from a company, why do they resign? Because they are not willing to, they have a certain information of something wrong happening in the company. They are aware of something wrong happening in the company, and therefore they cannot be party to it. Which is why they resign, which is a red flag. Which is why right now when we read in the newspaper that directors have resigned from Baiju, so it is a red flag. Something has gone wrong. It could be it could be bona fide or malafide. A bona fide is, for example, they took 100 crores as fee and they gave 150 crore to Shah Rukh Khan. And now they were not able to earn that back. A bona fide mistake. Why? Because they wanted to have a national star. They thought that by giving Shah Rukh Khan so much money, we will be able to get that as a matter of fees from the student. That is what they thought. It could be bona fide, genuine mistake, or it could be a malafide mistake. Whereas they may have siphoned off the money to another entity or anything like that. That can happen. So therefore, the minute you have independent directors, what will happen? They will start showing, they will not be willing to be party to that. So therefore, they will not allow any wrongdoing to happen, isn't it? Acha. Then, now, if you see, recently with respect to Adani Group, there was the Hindenburg report. So they pointed to another thing that was not along the lines of good corporate governance. And that was, they said that this is a thousands of crores worth company and auditor is some Jitan Ram Bhai. And that is a CA firm, which is the auditor. If you are having a 1,000 worth crore company, you should hire some big, yes, one of the big fours, any consultancy company which is a reputed auditor, because it knows that if we do some hanky-panky for small money, then our reputation will go down. Whereas this Jitan Bhai, Sachin Patel, with just 2 staff, he has nothing to worry. If he gets some money, he'll say, my career is over, but my future is secure. Right, so therefore, why? So therefore, the third institution that is needed is professional and competent auditors. So that is why it is said that how did PwC fail? That is the question that was asked to PwC. So again, I think that by doing everything, still something can go wrong. But at least somewhere we don't expect that a business will not fail. Most businesses will fail within the first 5 years of starting up. And we cannot stop, the government cannot stop a business from failing. But it can provide certain checks and balances. So PwC can be there. That is why it was a blot on PwC that how you could not be able to flag. There must have been something wrong. It must be that so one principle that may not have been followed was separation of management from ownership. What does this entail? This entails appointment of competent CEO Now, if the CEO is not separate, then this is again likely to happen. Independent directors are part of BOD. Now, one more thing that may happen is, for example, let us say he has 8,000 chains, and in one of these chains, there was a sexual harassment of a female worker at workplace. So that is against the law. Secondly, if such practices are allowed, let us say, for example, the organization was willing to overlook at it, then what will happen is, because the person who committed the crime was either a person high in position, or because he was one of the best people in the organization. So organization feels that if he is let go, then so organization is willing to tolerate such behavior. But do you see that the cumulative effect of such behavior will lead to driving away half the workforce? It will create a toxic work culture. It will create a very toxic work culture if the organization. So therefore, what would you want? That acha. If second is that, let's say the organization, for example, when there is a case of a sexual harassment of women at workplace, the organization resorts by taking a decision that we will not be hiring women in the organization itself, so that no such cases happen, right? That is one thing. Now, this again is not ethical, as well as it is not ethical, as well as it also affects the economy, given that it prevents the organization from benefiting from the one half of the workforce, which comprises women. So therefore, so what is expected? It is expected that if there is one woman, so all these issues, whether it is happening in the remote office of the chai business that Jitin has built, but it will all percolate to the top. The top will come to know that this has happened in, for example, in a small chai stall of our company in a remote area. But this will all come. So therefore, the government also entails that gender justice and gender rights are protected. So therefore, the government also mandates one, and that is, yes, appointment of a woman director. Woman director in board of directors. So what happened is, so now this is not just a moral requirement, but this is also a legal requirement. So when this happened, this clause were brought, then what happened is, in the one of the biggest companies of our country, that is Reliance Industries Limited, they appointed Nita Ambani in the board of directors. So nobody had thought कि ये हो जाएगा तुरंत. उसके बाद the government changed the rules and they said that appointment of women director in board of directors who is also independent. This is what had actually happened that time. Right? What is the purpose of doing all these things? The purpose of doing all these things is very simple. The purpose is to have more transparency in the running of the organization, so that if any red flags are there, then it is immediately known. All right? So this is, yes. Then another very important principle of corporate governance is protection of minority shareholder rights. See, in effect, in an organization, minority shareholders are different. So what happens is that the board represents the investors or the shareholders. But what may happen is, because the decisions are made by the board, all the shareholders, they cannot come together and make the decision, because the number of shareholders is very large. So therefore, certain directors are there who represent the shareholders. So therefore, corporate governance principles also mandate that minority shareholders' interests must be protected. Now, there are no explicit ways how this can be 100% enforced. There are no explicit ways, because a company cannot, a 2% minority cannot hold the 90% to hostage, because saying that we do not agree. Right? So that also cannot be learned, but it is a principle, accepted principle of corporate governance, that the shareholders minority shareholders, their rights must be protected, which means that decisions should not be taken that should harm the interest of every small shareholder matters. All right. Then apart from that, these are the 5 main principles, but you can also say clear identification of shareholders and creators and creditors. That should also be there. After that, you can add everything else that is there. That corporate governance principle entails that compliance to regulations, including labor laws and labor safety. Everything else, safety of women at workplace, providing for social security of workers. Right. एक दो line, write down a few lines. Corporate governance is the umbrella term for mechanisms and processes. Corporate governance is the umbrella term for mechanisms, processes, and principles. For mechanism, process, and principle by which private companies are controlled and directed. Corporate governance ensures, or you can say good corporate governance ensures that the business is run profitably and sustainably. In the interest of shareholders. Profitably and sustainably in the interest of shareholders, complies with local regulatory and environmental laws, and has adequate checks and balances. And has adequate checks and balances. That can prevent an organization from failing. Again, I repeat, a business will fail despite having corporate governance. Why? Because you are making cassette and suddenly people started listening to CD. And then, so therefore technology will change and your business can be obsolete. Or you are making CD and pen drive will come. Right? You are making AirPods or something like that and something else comes. Right? So therefore new things, businesses are always under challenge. So something can go. So, but these best practices ensure that red flags are there. So these are some principles of corporate governance. All right. इसमें क्या आता है corporate social responsibility. or CSR? Huh. Yes, so what happens is in India, the regulation, private companies are regulated by Ministry of Corporate Affairs under the Companies Act. Right, that is one regulator. So this is a general regulator for every private or public limited company. That is a general regulator. Companies that are publicly listed that are having a separate regulation that is coming from SEBI. All right, that are from SEBI. Apart from that, there could be other regulators which are specific to the industry. Yeah, for example, for insurance, you have IRDA. Then, so IRDA. So separate agencies are there for separate sectors. There are separate regulators. The purpose of these regulators is that they ensure several things, but among this, see, most of these regulators, the purpose is that there is no exploitation of the customer. That is the primary purpose. MCA will regulate that company is run irrespective of which sector the company is. The company is running on broader principles of corporate governance. One problem that Jiten may face, for example, when he starts earlier when he has started, he was starting as a simple proprietorship. Then because his business operations are expanding, he will make it a private limited company. So what happens is he needs money for certain emergency. So what happens is when he tries to transfer money from his private limited company to his bank account, the auditor tells him that he is not legally allowed to do so. Why? Because as an owner of the company, he has separate rights, and as a private limited company, it is a separate business entity which has its own existence independent of who the owner is. So he will be suddenly told that while he can give to the company, he cannot take from the company unless it is taken as an income. In short, he cannot take a loan from the company and use it somewhere. But what he can do is he can always take an income from the company on which due taxes have to be paid. All right? All right. What is corporate social responsibility? What is a corporate social responsibility according to you? The obligations which a company has to the society at large. Okay. All right. So, a larger social interest. All right. So what happened is that earlier conventional view of the corporate responsibility was that corporates have responsibility to whom? To the shareholder. We have done that in business ethics, that even Milton Friedman, celebrated economist, they have said that the business of business is to do business. They have no other responsibility to the wider society. But increasingly, so that is what is called a minimalist approach to corporate social responsibility. Okay, the minimalist approach to corporate social responsibility will be towards shareholders. But today we believe in what is called a maximalist approach. Right? There is a maximalist approach to corporate social responsibility. Right, what does this? So, maximalist approach, CSR in India is, so the maximalist approach says that a corporate has wider responsibility towards whom? Towards the society, which includes the local community, towards the environment, and towards other stakeholders. All right, it has a wider responsibility. In India, CSR, corporate social responsibility, while it is a moral principle everywhere, in India it is a legal point. So what happened is, it is recognized, it is a legal obligation. CSR in India is mandated by law. It is a legal obligation mandated by Section 135 of Companies Act. Lot of uproar had happened when this amendment to Companies Law had come. Lot of uproar, बहुत शोर शराबा हुआ था. That globally nothing like this exists. That if you are doing business in India, you have to. It was also known as what is called the 2% clause. All right, so this was a legal 2% clause in India. So therefore, it says it is often it was known as the 2% clause. This section 135. It says that companies which have either A, 5 crore of profit in preceding year, either 5 crore in profits in preceding year or 500 crore of net worth, or 1,000 crore of turnover. Now some of you will say, sir, in modern times net worth is much higher than the turnover in edtech companies or in any startup. What is the reason? So this is conventionally, it is understood that if 1,000 crore, broadly you understand something like this, that the turnover generally in any business earlier, before the onslaught of investor-led companies, it was believed if a company is having 1,000 crore turnover, then it's at least worth a 500 crore. But now, after the investor-led model that you see, that this company is a 1.2 billion, this billion, that billion, wo jo sunte ho, so that is because what happens is that on the basis of turnover, there is a 10 times multiplication factor, which investors use, right? Market capitalization. Market cap will be something like, no, is a share value, is a total share value. So which is why you will not have a market cap of, see, one more clarity you need to have. For example, let us say any company is worth, for example, $10 billion. It is a startup. What is a startup? What is a unicorn? No, unicorn, two parts are definition. One is that it is worth $1 billion. And what is the second part? It must be privately held. It is a privately held company. Less than 5 years, but it's a privately held company. See, what is happening is that these companies which are having a valuation of 5 billion, 4 billion or 10 billion, they are valued where? Not in the marketplace. They are, let's say some of three of us decide that this pencil is worth 5 crore rupees. And we ask him to join by paying 50 lakh and make it worth 10 crore rupees. But what will happen if I list it in the market? This okay, ye to 100 rupees mein milti hai. This can happen. So therefore, what is the real test of the the worth of a business? That will be when it will be placed in the market, when it will be listed in the stock exchange. All right, when it will be listed in the stock exchange, that is the real worth of any. Yes, that is the problem that Paytm and all others are facing currently. All right. So therefore, if they have anything like this, then they must commit 2% of average profit of last 3 years to CSR. 2% of average profit of last 3 years to CSR. This is what the Companies Act mandates. National protest over something like this. What were the protests? Now the government is legally taking 2%. So that was a big roar. And how can it be mandated by law? But CSR has its own. So what happens is that they must be to commit to CSR, and these must be used for, a social purpose. Who will decide what is the social purpose? The government has come up with certain list. You can donate it to NGOs, you can do this. So there are certain positives of it. What are certain positives of mandating CSR? See, most of the time its purpose is to instill values of compassion and social responsibility. in the private sector. Now, what is happening is that large companies such as Tata's are already having those values. They already have compassion and social service values in them. So one argument is that the benefit of it is, second, is that it universalizes it for everyone. You may say that my is a small business, I cannot open a Tata Cancer Research Hospital. Tata can do so because they are Tata. I am very small, I just have started my tea stall. Right, he can argue. So it universalizes it for everyone. It universalizes it for everyone. So corporate social responsibility is not just for few. हाँ बोलो. That is not why you can say it may end up creating some physical social asset, but that's not why you can't ask a company which has just started doing business in India that now you have opened a business in India, now you have to pay 2% legally to the government. You think of it, will it repel foreign companies or not? They'll say, we will set up our entity in Singapore or something, we will divert money from here, but we will not set up a proper office in India. Foreign banks, lot of banks, for example, are not happy with the state of regulation in India. All right? Then it also expects that it is sometimes said that it awakens the conscience. It awakens the conscience of those who believe CSR is charity and not obligation. Then it also its purpose is also to mitigate. See, whenever any business operations will take place, will it lead to certain negative externality or not? Even as we are having this small activity in our class, are you not writing on page that is leading to cutting down of trees? Are you not consuming electricity that is leading down to burning of fossil fuels? So any activity will eventually, so therefore the purpose is also to mitigate negative externalities of doing business. So there are arguments for, and some people therefore, what happens is they were also an opposition, the negatives or criticism of the CSR law, corporate social responsibility as a law. See, CSR, the term itself means that companies have a moral obligation to the society and environment at large. This is what CSR means. In India, CSR is mandated by law, which means that if you meet a certain criteria, then you will, so for this, every company has to come up with what is called a corporate social responsibility fund. All right, corporate social responsibility fund, which must, and what should be the contribution? Upon meeting the criteria of 5 crore, 500 crore, 1000 crore, what must the company deposit in the CSR fund? It must deposit 2% of the average profit of preceding 3 years. This is what is, so therefore. So when companies were told to create a CSR fund, obviously they were already troubled. Why? Because they say that we do not have margins. We need to save the profits so that we are able to fight bad days in business. Companies must be profitable so that they are able to fight bad days in business, isn't it? So therefore, there was a lot of uproar with respect to it. So the first argument from, next is the economist argument. Economists like Friedman, it from their argument that business have no, the business of business is to, so any mandating any such corporate social responsibility goes against, yes, against shareholder interest. जो मालिक है उससे तो पूछ लेते हैं. You have imposed this tax. This was also known as the 2% tax. That already taxes in India are high. And then now you have another 2%. Yes, Arundhati Roy will come up with that. Last argument unhi se karenge. When you have written your mains, read Arundhati Roy's any of the books, especially The Saint and the Doctor. Very beautiful. I mean, I've been reading it like 2-3 times the same book I've read in the past 2-3 years. It's The Saint and the Doctor. So the criticisms, there's a very intellectual angle to it, and very enlightening ideas are there. It's not that she's respected in the West just like that, because she's a rebel child of India. That is not the case. Her ideas are also, some ideas are very fresh and very well-studied ideas. Another argument is that act of philanthropy should not be made इस कमरे में सबको दान करना है. That should not be the case. In this room, everybody has to make a donation. That should not be the case. Then third criticism is that forced philanthropy, it leads to what is called forced philanthropy. So that is leading to diversion of funds. It is leading to diversion of funds for marketing. Diversion. So when this happened, I told you earlier that in our country there was a campaign going on that there was a discourse in our country about 7-8 years from right now. The discourse in our country was going on. The Pratham had come with a report. All right, Pratham with respect to learning outcomes of children. So one of the reasons that was how long the chain goes and how it leads to how market forces respond to it. So one of the reports of Pratham came that learning outcomes in India is poor. An 8th class student is not able to solve a 2nd class maths. So then what happened is, so why this is happening? One is the classical reason, teacher is bad. Coaching theek nahi thi. Okay, that is one reason. But apart from that, there was observed that there is a problem of learning outcomes is happening because of what is called, that time the concept came of. And what is happening is when the surveys were done, that the children were quite grown up. Which means that they are not having any, aisa nahi ki they are not getting enough to eat. So what suddenly then if he's grown up like a 8th class or 9th class student, it means he's getting enough to eat also. Then why he's not able to solve the problem? Yes, so that was the term came, 2-3 things came, that in some pockets of country we are having the problem what is called hidden hunger. So hidden hunger concept, it came from there only. That now this person, he's 6 feet 2 inches tall, but yahan se he's empty. Why? Because during his growth phase, he did not get the necessary micronutrients that is necessary for the development of his mind, his mental abilities, which is why he can't solve a. So now it was what is called a waste. Now the government is very pareshan, is very troubled. Why? Because you have a wasted generation. Isn't it? You have a wasted generation. So therefore, that is a big blot on the government, that whole, at least 1.5 crore children are whole gone. Now what, because their mental ability is not good, so they will be caught in low wages. The other discourse that was going on in the country is that another section of people, there was what is called stunting. There was a problem of stunting in growth. So that the stunting in growth was linked to not washing hands. So that time when this CSR law came, so all these companies which were into hand wash business, they started, what did they do? They diverted all their funds to what? Ad campaigns that wash your hands and help fight India from stunting. So therefore, all these funds were diverted for what? For marketing, for awareness generation with respect to hand washing. Sponsored by whom? Dettol, Savlon. All right. Then there is another concept here. It is of greenwashing. What is greenwashing? We have discussed this. My time is over. Greenwashing, where it is an advertising strategy where companies persuade their audience to believe that they are greener than their actual operations. So Coal India Limited also had a CSR front page advertisements of a green forest. Green forest, Coal India Limited, afforestation activity. Uske baad the debate started that, then now you have the contemporary debate is, if Coal India plants all neem trees in like 100 hectares as compensatory forestation, does it lead to the creation of a forest? No, it does not. It merely leads to planting of trees. The biodiversity will not all be neem eating or So you cannot have a natural forest just by planting trees. A natural forest is having a lot of diversity. It will have microbiomes. All right. We'll continue in the next class. All right. This itself. So next class we'll finish all the topics, and after that we'll need 2 or 3 classes for international ethics, from which questions are coming. So, and from which questions are coming. Last years also, I think we got some questions from the notes. Sakshi Vimal ma'am will be taking the classes for international ethics, and then we'll come back to case studies. All right. We also in the next class everybody got the red book of ethics. So bring it in the next class. We'll discuss some questions. Will be done. So we'll see how questions are to be answered. All right. Anything else? All right. Thank you, class.